Hi there. I'm Wayne Duvenage, the CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse. And I'd like to reflect on a question which we're often asked. And that is, why should business contribute or donate to OUTA? And it's a good question because we're so deep in the woods when it comes to the work that we do in defending our democracy from the abuse of political power and the day-to-day corruption and maladministration of taxpayers' money. We just take it for granted that the public and business leaders are aware of what we're doing for South Africa. But not everybody is. I mean, not everybody gets to see or hear the interviews and the news and the engagements that we have on radio, television, and print media. And so I think it's important that I get to the point and give you a brief overview of why our work is so important to this country and why we actually need your support. You may have heard of OUTA's work. We started as the opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance back in 2012, and today we are far more than that. And let me just elaborate on that project. It was the e-toll matter in Gauteng. Took a long time, cost a lot of money, but eventually we got there. We halted a very irrational and, quite frankly, a corrupt decision by government to introduce e-tolling in Gauteng. A lot of money would have flowed offshore. It was a waste of time. It was so inefficient, it was going to collapse in the long run anyway. And that on its own has saved this country billions of rands. But it was in around 2016 that we amended our mandate to go beyond the e-toll saga. And since then, we've done about over 320 projects. And without going too deep into them, I just want to reflect on some of them because it'll give you an idea of how we do protect this country and prevent it from the corruption and maladministration and the inefficiency that emanates from government officials who have other agendas with state funds. And they're just simply not so often focused on the best interests of the public. So to start with, as we crossed into this new phase and became the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, kept that same OUTA acronym in around 2016, we worked with Cynthia Stimple to prevent a boutique finance company from scoring a corrupt deal of about 249 million rand. It was facilitated by a corrupt SAA board at the time. And we worked very quickly with Cynthia Stimple, who was inside SAA, to stop that deal. Then, a little bit later on, we intervened to stop the Guptas from moving around 1.8 billion rand of Tegeta mine rehabilitation funds. It was a trust fund. They were going to move offshore. It was something that our government Department of Minerals, Resources and Energy was supposed to do, and they failed to do so, and we had to intervene and stop this money from flowing offshore. We then also provided the State Capture Commission with a lot of input that we had got from the Gupta leaks, where we had also started to lay in charges against a number of political figures at the time. We challenged and continue, by the way, to highlight our concerns around the OUTA Act, not because we don't support the law when it comes to enforcement of our road traffic laws and regulations, but because OUTA is simply impractical, it's unworkable. They've been struggling to introduce it, and we believe they never will be able to introduce it efficiently and effectively. And we're asking government to engage with us so we can sort this problem out. We were also largely responsible, by the way, for halting the Karpowership deal. Now, let me explain this just very briefly. Karpowerships, 3 ships docked in our harbors around the country, providing about 1.2 megawatts of electricity. It's just over one stage of load shedding at a time when we didn't need it. We were coming out of this electricity crisis. And for 20 years, we would have been locked into a deal with this Turkish Karpowership company at electricity that cost 4 times the price that it does today. The middlemen stood to gain a lot from the lucrative gas supply contracts that were going to come out of this deal. It was so important that we did stop this. And then we had to introduce legal papers to halt the president's intentions to introduce a state of disaster on electricity. It was just not required. In 2023, we were coming out of our electricity crisis, and had we allowed the state of disaster on electricity to go ahead, we would have seen the government and its cabinet members and others in positions of power being able to shoe in deals like the Karpowerships one, because they would have abused the whole the emergency powers that they get under the state of disasters. And fortunately, we're able to stop that as well. We've also introduced a number of interventions to uncover corruption in many of the SETAs and the sectoral education training authorities. There's about 20 billion rand a year, by the way, from skills development levies that goes to these SETAs, 21 SETAs. And the opportunities for corruption and maladministration to take place is immense. Many of these SETAs have findings from the Auditor General. They have qualified audits. And we have first-hand experience in the amount of corruption and maladministration that takes place. And our work is ongoing in this space. We also got very involved, by the way, in the State Lotteries Commission, just uncovering and unpacking corruption that was taking place and money flows to companies that just didn't exist. We've also been very involved in the National Student Finance Aid Scheme, commonly known as NSFAS. And our work there led, by the way, to the dismissal of its CEO, Ndile Nongogo, and the resignation of the board chair, Ernest Khoza. It was very important for us to do this work because what we could see happening at NSFAS and the problem still exists today was immense. It was really related to gross maladministration and a lot of corrupt activity taking place. Look, I could go on. I think you get the idea. As a South African taxpayer, as a business leader, you don't need to be reminded of the corruption and mismanagement of our funds that's happening to South Africa. You see it every day in the degradation of our towns and cities that we live in. You see it in the news that you read about so often and in the media. And somebody's got to do this work. And we also recognize there are many other civil society organizations doing good work in South Africa, but our work exists to hold those in power to account for their abuse of that power. We need to challenge them, to challenge the maladministration. We need to ensure that our government works towards a more efficient, ethical, and functional state. Because that's what our economy needs. That's what your business needs. But we can't do this on thin air. We have to pay market-related salaries to our team of almost 40 staff. We need to cover the costs of our systems, our offices, our subscriptions. Costs a few million rand every month to manage this organization. And the current economic status and the climate is a tough one for civil society organizations like ourselves. And our donations are also coming under pressure. And our view is that if every CEO or companies could contribute whatever it is that they believed was worthwhile to this work that we do on a monthly basis, I can assure you that we would do more work. More of this work that we're known for that radically increases the pressure for reform in this country. And so I'm inviting you to become part of the solution. And it's not difficult to do so. If you visit outa.co.za, there's a contribute here or donate button there. It takes a few minutes for you to sign up your organization. You get monthly invoices. It's all above board. We're a non-profit organization. We are a public benefit organization. That means you get SARS Section 18A tax rebate certificates. We're also a level 1 B-BBEE organization. And just to finish off, there's enough motivation, I believe, there to compel, and hopefully compel you to say, hey, we need to support OUTA, and we would appreciate that so much. It's just so important because we just cannot outsource accountability, and it really is upon all of us, especially those who lead and in business, to participate, to become active corporate citizens. I want to thank you for your valuable time taken to listen to this message, and hopefully you become an OUTA supporter. Thank you.